Hello, my name is Joseph Mbele. I'm a Tanzanian. I teach at St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. I've been here since 1991. And before this, I taught at the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. So I enjoy giving talks like this, recording talks like this on topics like culture, education, and globalization. I have a YouTube channel. I put out some videos from time to time. And so today I would like to talk about diversity in the world and in the workplace. The topic is problems of diversity in the world and the workplace. Conventionally, people nowadays talk a lot about diversity. Here in the USA, especially, they talk about diversity and inclusion, and in colleges and workplaces, hospitals, schools. It's become a big topic, and they always have somebody in charge of promoting or issues of diversity and inclusion. They do trainings, they do lectures, all kinds of things. But it is becoming a big topic, a big concern, because now, as the world becomes increasingly a global village, people from different cultures find themselves, working in the same area, in the same company, those kinds of things. Being in the same institution, it's an unavoidable process. So workplaces are changing. They have now to deal with the fact of cultural diversity. So one of the things that has to be addressed and is being addressed is just what to do when you have people of different cultures in the same place, in the same workplace. The conventional view, one of the conventional views rather, is that diversity is very beneficial. You bring people with different perspectives together, different ways of looking at problems. They might come up with different ways of solving those problems. They might enhance the productivity of the workplace, innovation, and things like that. I think this kind of perspective of looking at diversity in a positive light is gaining ground, and it's also politically correct. Nobody wants to come out and challenge the conventional idea that we need diversity is good, those kinds of things. I guess we need to be more careful and look, a bit critically at this conventional wisdom. I have been thinking about these issues in terms of how they play out in the world as such. And I published this book recently, Chickens in the Bus, More Thoughts on Cultural Differences. It's a sequel. The earlier book is Africans and Americans Embracing Cultural Differences. Now, in this one, I have said categorically that in a place where there are no cultural differences, in a place where you have homogeneity, people of the same culture together, there are actually less problems based on the culture. because the culture is like a language. Yes, culture is like a language. And so in a place where there's only one culture, it's as if you are in a place where people speak the same language, they understand one another, the behavior, the habits, expectations of what you do and what you don't do. They have this common understanding. It's just they're speaking one language. And so if there are problems, they're problems of a different kind, not problems caused by cultural factors or differences. So this is what I say in my book. But when people from a different culture get into this place now, that's when cultural differences begin to matter. That's when cultural differences become problematic. They can cause tensions and misunderstandings and hostilities and all kinds of problems. So this is the kind of thing I say in this book, that when people of different cultures get together, the possibility or the danger arises that there will be problems now. Because it's like having people of different languages together. You don't assume that if you put people who speak Chinese together with people who speak Spanish and Swahili, everything will be okay. No, it will not be okay. It is a problem having people of different languages together. The same with cultures. That's how it works in the world. Communities that face immigrants from another culture, they feel challenged. And this is the type of thing I say in my book. Tensions could arise where, before there were no such tensions. So I take a skeptical view. I don't just want us to celebrate cultural diversity, say, in the workplace. Let's take the workplace now as a microcosm of the world. If there is a workplace where before you had only people of one culture, working, they would have problems, but not problems caused by cultural differences. When you bring people from other cultures in that workplace, then you need to be very careful. You need to be very prepared to deal with real problems. Let me use the analogy of the traditions, say in Europe or in Africa or wherever, where, you had certain occupations and they were just for men. Just men working together. They have issues, but they are of a different kind than the issues you have when you bring women into that workplace. Take the military. There have been debates about, getting women in the military. When it was all men, they had problems, but there were certain kinds of problems. The moment you bring women, you change the equation. And there are so many issues that need to be addressed because now you have women. It's the same with cultures. So I'm one of those people who are a bit skeptical about this idea that bring people together in the factory, in the workplace, in the institution, bring people together, it's beneficial. The cultural diversity is great. We should embrace diversity. My opinion is different. We should be very careful because in bringing people of different cultures together, we are actually causing or inviting problems. We are inviting problems. So what I suggest is that people who find themselves in that situation, they really need to start working on trying to understand their differences because they behave differently. People of this culture behave differently, they think differently, they talk differently. And so that can be irritating to the other people, who were used to something different. and who knew only one way of doing things. So when you bring people who behave differently, talk differently, they have different mindset, habits, and you bring them together with people who have, again, very different mannerisms and habits and things, it can't be a harmonious workplace, for example. It cannot be. So a process of education, a process of learning, a process of discovering the reasons why people behave this way, the foundations, the cultural foundations of this difference, is a very important part of what has to be done. It is very important. I remember I went to an institution in Minneapolis, medical institution, and I was invited there to give a talk after I published this book here. That was many years ago. The book is Africans and Americans Embracing Cultural Differences. Some Ethiopian lady that works there, she invited me, and she used to be my student here at St. Olaf College. So I went there and I started talking, about differences between Africans and Americans, cultural differences. In the audience, it was a diverse audience. There were Africans, there were Americans, there were people from Central America. I remember there was that African there who was so excited to hear me explain some of the ways of the Africans, and he stood up and confessed that for a long time people were not understanding him in that institution, and now he felt validated, and he felt this was a great opportunity for people to understand him in that place. I will never forget this. He basically took over my lecture because he was so excited that I'd opened this window for him to say, some few things about himself. I've given talks in different places, and I've found it's the same reaction. People become more relaxed once they realize, there's logic in the cultures of the other people, and that the cultures don't necessarily have to be, seen as weird. And in my writings, in this book, for example, I make fun of, the American culture. I make fun of the African culture, and that way, I think it's very humbling when you see your own culture, exposed that way. You think it is the one way, to behave. You think, this is the right way to do things. And when somebody from another culture tells you, how this thing, appears to them, it is humbling. You can laugh at yourself, you can laugh at the other culture, and this reduces tensions. And I think this is what I promote, the idea that we need to, just relax, explore our differences, and see how weird actually the things we do are in reality, especially when you look at them from an outsider's point of view. So I enjoy talking about cultural differences. I enjoy, going to places, where they need to address, issues of cultural diversity. And so far, I've spoken to schools and Rotary clubs. I have been in charge of providing cultural orientation to people going to, study abroad, those kinds of things. The message I have for today is that we should be careful and not jump at the idea that cultural diversity is this wonderful thing and we should just embrace it. It could be a recipe for disaster when you have people of different cultures together, when you just put them together and you don't have a program of, learning. And I don't like the idea of subjecting these conversations to issues of human rights and, intimidating people with warnings about, uh, respecting other cultures and so on. I think it's important for people to relax and look at their cultures the way I do, in terms of seeing, how they can be interpreted by somebody who is from a different culture. This is what, this is the message I have for today. I think we need to acknowledge that cultural diversity is problematic, and we have to be intentional about addressing the issues. And I've realized, because in my own writings, I talk about my own problems of dealing, with American culture, the funny situations I've found myself in, the embarrassing situations. That way I have been able to connect with other people. They read my book, and they come out with their own stories. I've realized the approach I'm taking, it provokes people to come out with their own stories, because they realize, we are in the same boat. And sharing these stories helps to reduce tensions and keep us all humble when we face people of a different culture. You can get these books online, and all it takes is for people to read them, and they find themselves talking, because the books speak about issues that they also face. People are very afraid sometimes to talk about situations they've encountered, which are maybe embarrassing or, awkward and things like that. But the books that I've written, they make people at ease. They feel they can open up as well, just as I've opened up. There's a group in Tanzania. There's a group in Tanzania in the city of Tanga. It formed, just last year. It's people of different countries: Germany, Russia, England, Jamaica, Trinidad, Tanzania, places like that. And they're in that city, and they formed a group. They get together once a month, and they talk about cultural differences. They're having a lot of fun, laughing and learning at the same time. And I'm just grateful that they discovered these two books, and they're using them as a resource, as a catalyst for their conversations. And that has been very, good to observe. And I feel very happy and very humbled at the same time to have succeeded in raising this kind of issues and inspiring people to really talk and enjoy the conversations about the cultural differences. So the books are available online. You can order them from www.lulu.com. www.lulu.com. Lulu is Lulu, and I wish you all the best.